Good morning. This morning we're going to learn how to download and install SketchUp. And once we've installed it, we're going to set up the desktop with the appropriate tools and toolbars. As you can see, I've already navigated to the download page for SketchUp. And I'll include this download link in the text so that you don't have to remember it. At this point, all I need to do is choose the appropriate version of SketchUp. The Pro version costs about $495. What we're going to demonstrate today, and in most of the posts that I blog for American Woodworker, will be the free version. And that's here. So we just click it. Now we have to choose the desktop we're operating on. I'm operating on the Windows desktop. And while this doesn't include Windows 8 right now, that's a minor problem. It really does run under Windows 8. So I just agree and download. And on the Windows operating system, I get this little box that asks me if I want to save the file. So I'll save it. And just know where it's going to put it. On the Windows platform, it puts it in a folder called Download under the user's name. And now we need to wait for the download to occur. I'll go offline, wait, and I'll come back. My download has completed, so I click on the SketchUp file that's been downloaded, and the installer begins. And it says, "Welcome to SketchUp 8 Setup Wizard." Just click Next. I have to accept the license agreement. Click Next. And now I got to choose where to put it. On SketchUp on Windows, typically it will go in the program's x86 file. That is, if you are on Windows 7 or 8, it'll go in the program's file x86 Google SketchUp 8. And that's a file. That's a location you want to remember because you're going to be doing a lot with plugins folders, which is right under this file location. So that's one you want to write down. I'd click Next and install. The install will take a little while, so we may do the rest of it offline. Well, that was pretty quick. So we'll finish. And once it was finished, it put an icon on my desktop, the SketchUp 8 icon, so I'll click on that to open SketchUp 8. This is the very first window you will see when you install SketchUp 8. By the way, you'll notice it is now Trimble. It used to be Google, now it is Trimble. It's been acquired by Trimble a few months back. And you have a bunch of options here, and I'm going to suggest you ignore those for the moment. Also at the bottom of this screen, there is you can choose a template to work with, but let's not worry about that right now either. And there's a little checkbox here. And if you leave it checked, you will always see this screen on startup. I'm going to uncheck it. And then hit Start Using SketchUp. Well, it's going to insist I select a template, in which case I believe down here there's a product design woodworking inches. I'm going to start off with that one. You may get this this next screen shown here in your browser, thanking you for downloading SketchUp and encouraging you to buy the Pro version. We will just close that for now. We don't need it. And now I've opened up SketchUp, and I'll bring that into the window. When you first open SketchUp, this is how it will appear. I'm going to choose the Select tool here. The first thing I do is get rid of the toolbar that it sets up when it opens up Window. So I will go to the View menu, Toolbars, unclick Getting Started, Go back to the toolbar menu and click the large tool set. Now I like to put them down here along the left side. Notice they don't fit on my screen here, so for the purposes of this video I'm going to go back to View Toolbars and I'm going to select, you can't see it down here, I'm going to deselect Use Large Icons. I'm going to use the small icons. By the way, over here to the side has been this little window which has been working busily trying to teach us how to use SketchUp. We're going to close it for now. We can always get back to it under the Windows menu, Instructor. What I want to do now is add a menu bar across the top that will allow me to see the standard icons, the standard views, and the layers. So I'm going to go to the View Toolbar window and pick up Standard. Drag it up here on the top. Position it. And now I'm going to pick up Views. Also position those. And I'll pick up Layers and position those. Okay, now I have my basic toolbar set up. And these are the ones we're going to work with in this tutorial and the following two. So one of the things I can do is go to the View Toolbars and say Save Toolbar Position. Having done that, if I move these toolbars around, for instance, if I should drag this down here, and let's say close this one, and come back here to the View Toolbars, I can now restore toolbar position. And there you go. Pretty cool. Alright, now I want to deal with some other setup issues. Let's go immediately to Windows Preferences. Windows Preferences is a setup that deals with the entire application. And let's look at some of the important things in here. Not much important in the Applications window here. You can have a default image editor if you choose. If you have Photoshop or something like that and you want to choose a default image editor, you can put that there. Compatibility, just leave these unchecked. Drawing, leave that set up as it's set up when when SketchUp's installed. Now extensions, down the road we're going to be adding scripts, Ruby scripts, and this is where you'll select the Ruby scripts that you want active. Well-behaving Ruby scripts will always show up in here. Not so well-behaving Ruby scripts won't. Here's a preference window where you can set your default folders. I've got mine set up so that all the folders, all the models, components, materials, styles, and things like that are placed in my users folder. When you first set yours up, they may be different here and you may have to go and change them. And you can do that by just selecting this and selecting the folder that you want these things placed in. Since I've done this before, it already knows that. Okay, this is a big one. This is important. Under saving, what we want to do is say create a backup, auto save every 5 minutes. What will happen is when I start a new model, once I save it the first time, it will then automatically save it every 5 minutes under the same name. That's very important. You don't want to be wasting more than 5 minutes of your time should you crash or lose power or something like that. OpenGL, if you have a hardware accelerator, make sure the first and last checkboxes here are checked. Nothing important here on shortcuts. You can change your shortcut. Let's see if I can find one here. Shortcut keys for something like camera orbit. Right now it's set to O. You can change that if you wish here. This one's an important one. We're going to come back to this one because we're going to be setting up a template. Right now we chose product design in wood when we first opened SketchUp. We're going to come back and customize this. Workspace. You can use the large tool buttons if you wish, but because my screen here is small for the video purposes, right now I'm not using that. You can also access that under the View Toolbars menu. Alright, so now I've got my preferences set up the way I want them. The other thing I want to set up is the axis. Notice right now that the blue axis is tilted to the left. And that almost always indicates that you're in perspective view. Perspective view is a real view where everything comes to a vanishing point as you look at it. You know, if you look at a train coming down the track, the last train would kind of vanish to a point. When we're drawing furniture, we're going to want to draw in parallel projection mode. So I'm going to the camera menu and I'm going to select parallel projection. Why is that? Well, that's because in parallel projection, parallel lines will actually be parallel. They won't vanish to a vanishing point. So you can immediately recognize parallel lines. Lines that are perpendicular will appear as 60 degrees instead of 90 degrees, but they'll seem obvious. It'll be obvious that they're 90 degrees. In perspective view, you really can't tell what is a right angle and what isn't. But the most important part is you can draw scaled drawings. You know, 1:2 or 1 foot equals 1 inch or something like that. You can draw scale drawings and print scale drawings in isometric or parallel projection. Those are the same, by the way. Isometric, as you see right here in that little icon, ISO, that really means parallel projection. You can print out scale drawings in that view, whereas you can't in perspective. So we want to be sure that parallel projection is chosen. And you'll notice when you're in parallel projection mode that the vertical axis, the blue, is in fact vertical. The green axis is 60 degrees to the right, and the blue axis is 120 degrees to the right. I'm sorry, the red axis is 120 degrees to the right from the blue. That's typical of parallel projection. Now we have that set up. We want to go set up our model info. Now, model info is a setup window that is specific to a model. And when you set up a new model, it will immediately look at your model info that's been saved. And it will grab that information and use it for that model. Since we want all of our models to be the same, we want to set up model info and save it. We'll start with animation. There's not much we need to do here. We're not going to deal with animation right now, maybe later. Or in components, we can leave this set up as it is when you start the installation. Credits, you can go online and register with Google and then get author credits so that when you upload a model to the Google Google 3D warehouse, you'll get credit for it. It will give you credits under your name. Dimensions, this is an important one. Right now I've got my text set up for Tahoma 12 point in black text. I like to use leader lines not with closed arrows, they look too black. I like leader lines with slashes. It keeps the drawing from being so black. And the rest of this can be left alone for the moment. There's nothing here to set up under File because I haven't created anything yet. Geolocation allows you to add the location of the drawing. For furniture, that's not terribly interesting. Rendering, we want to use anti-alias. There's a bunch of statistics about our model, but since we don't have a model yet, there's nothing here. But normally it will tell you how many edges, faces, components, groups, and so on and so forth. Text. This is for leader text and things like that. Screen text. And again, I have Tahoma 12 points, black. Leader arrows, in this case they are closed arrows instead of slashes. And the very most important part of model info is this little guy right here called units. This is an absolute must. You must set it up this way. Precision should be your highest precision. In this case, we're choosing fractional, not architectural, not decimal, not engineering, but fractional. And that will automatically choose inches. If you want to work in metric, you can choose decimal, and then you can choose metric over here. But I'm going to choose fractional, inches, and I'm going to choose the most highest resolution, 1/64 of an inch. I'm going to make sure that this is unchecked, enable length snapping. We do not want to check that. If we check that, we'll probably find that very often or frequently our lines don't come together. And that's because we've snapped to some number, like a 1/64 of an inch grid, but the other line we're snapping to may not be on the grid. So we'll get gaps. So leave this unchecked. And whatever's here doesn't matter once it's unchecked. But it'll almost always match the number you chose under precision. All right, so now we've got that set up. The last thing we want to set up today is the styles. If we go to Window, Styles, we're going to choose, right now, the default when you open this is that you're looking at the Styles menu, which has a lot of options down here. You can check on assorted styles, colored styles, sketchy styles, and each one of these will have a whole bunch of styles. What I want to do is go to the in-house style, the one that I'm using right at the moment, in model style. So I click this little house right here. And now I'm going to go into edit mode by clicking the edit tab. And I'm going to start with this first little icon on the left right here. And I'm going to make sure that all of these are unchecked except edges. I don't want anything else checked except edges. Now, later on, when you're more experienced with SketchUp, you can experiment with these things and see what happens. But for now, make sure just edges is checked. Here I want to look and make sure that the front color is white and the back color is this funny little color that comes with SketchUp when it's first installed. You can click on this and notice that the RGB value is 171, 176, 204. So we'll just leave that as it is right now. The important thing here on this third icon is that the background, my preference is that it's white. So I'm going to click that, move everything, all the sliders to the right, make the background white. Notice my background on my drawing table turned white when I did that. Leave these unchecked. We don't want a ground or a sky because we're drawing furniture, not houses. Not much to do here. If you have watermarks or something like that, you can create them here. And here we want these four checked. And that's pretty much the way I think that's the default case when SketchUp is loaded. Later down the road, we'll be doing section cuts. You may want to change this to 1 pixel instead of 3 pixel. Otherwise, you get fat looking section cut lines. So I'm going to change that to 1 pixel. All right, now that we've got our style set up, we have to save it. If we don't save it, the next time we open a model, it'll have the wrong style. So I'm going to save it right here. And I save it with this little rotating icon here. If I save that, close. And now, one last thing, and we're going to end the session for today. We've made a lot of changes to the preferences window and to our model info window and to styles and things like that. We want to save all that. Before we do, let's make one more change. That is, when we open this window, each time we open it, we don't know how big this workbench is, this opening, this window. It could be an inch by an inch, it could be a mile by a mile. So what we're going to do is take one of the very basic tools here, the rectangle tool. We're going to draw a rectangle starting at the origin and dragging it out. And I'm going to type 12 inches, just 12 comma 12. That's 12 inches by 12 inches. And I'm going to sort of fill the window with that by using the Zoom Extents tool. And now that I've got the window filled, I'm going to back off just a little bit and then delete that rectangle. Now I know that when I open the window, this window is roughly 12 inches by 12 inches. And so when I start drawing things, they will look, you know, like I might think they should look if they're roughly 12 inches by 12 inches. So the last thing now is to save this, and I'm going to save it as a custom template. The way I do that is go to File, Save as Template, give it a name. I'm going to call mine SRWW for Swamp Road Woodworks. I can put a description here if I want. I'm going to give it a file name that's the same. Once I click in this area, it selects that automatically. I can change it if I want. And now I'm just going to save it. Now I can be sure that everything, all the work I've done today will be saved. The next time I open up SketchUp with a blank model, I'll start from this point. Okay, next week we're going to do some more customizing. So until then, have a good day.